that that's going to be okay and that is going to work. But if you do, especially in this area, if you're having a hard time hearing me, come on down closer and join it. But you should be able to hear me. My sons will tell you they hear my voice yelling at them regularly, even though they don't live with me anymore. So my name is Kim Levy. I get to be here today because your kind folks at the Coalition had heard me speak and they said, hey, we want to bring her in to speak. And here's the challenge with bringing in speakers. They cost money, right? And so sometimes that's very limiting as to what speakers you can have come in. Your group was smart enough to leverage what we call a resource called the Opioid Response Network. And what the Opioid Response Network does is it sends trainers in a variety of capacities all around, well, technically all around the country, but we'll just speak for the state right now. They will send people to train your faculty, train your parents, train your work groups, train communities, all with the arrow pointing at making your communities healthier, making individuals healthier. And so if you have a training need, and if you're like, I wish somebody would come in and train us on adverse childhood experiences, or burnout and fatigue, or what do we do about substances in our community, as long as it connects to drugs and alcohol, and pretty much everything connects to drugs and alcohol, you can leverage the Opioid Response Network. You just go in, you ask them for a training, they'll have a meeting with you, decide what your training need is, they'll match you up with the right trainer, and then we come to you for free. I will say free again, and it always feels like you're like there has to be a catch. There is no catch. The only thing that they're going to do is at the end of the presentation want feedback from you. They're just going to ask you to take a QR code and say whatever your thoughts were about tonight's workshop. So it's pretty simple and easy to utilize. If you're interested, Catherine Cunningham right there is the person who you would talk to, but Opioid Response Network is the place online that you go to and you request it. I always start out with a disclaimer, although you're going to hear a lot of stuff that is backed by data, backed by science and research. We're talking about drugs and alcohol and kids and all sorts of other things, and as a result, what happens oftentimes when we talk about those, we're talking about big stuff. And so my disclaimer is, if feelings come up, if you want to talk about them afterwards, I will be here long after the presentation is done, not too long, because I have to drive to Queens tonight, right after I'm done talking with you guys. But please just know, as we spend time talking together, that my disclaimer is it gets a little deep at times. I acknowledge that. I want to say that up front, but also we'll be there to help talk with anybody about that afterwards. So here's what I do. Everywhere the place that star is the place that I traveled in this last year. And I've gone there specifically to talk about drugs and alcohol and positive mental health and positive psychology and leadership and a variety of other subjects. And no matter where I go, I wind up meeting with amazing people who have good hearts, who want to make a difference, and oftentimes not sure exactly how to do it. But wherever I go, there's this concern for mental health in our youth that gets prioritized by every group. And when we begin to talk about mental health for youth, we can't not talk about we cannot not talk about the role that social media plays. I shared with the group earlier, this is where I come from, the Hamptons. And as soon as I tell people that I come from the Hamptons, suddenly they'll do things like, oh, or they'll say, oh, it must be nice. And all sorts of assumptions will get made about what my life is like in the Hamptons. See, that's where I left yesterday morning, and people oftentimes think that I have a house that looks like this. I have a help in my house. My clicker is not really friendly today. And that I have a yacht. That's Tiger Woods' yacht he brought into the U.S. Open a few years ago. But my life and experience in the Hamptons looks nothing like that. Although these are things that are fantastic for a vision board, that was not necessarily my experience growing up. I began to realize that my mom and my experience was different than other kids in school when this little red poker chip would show up at my desk every day. And every day that red poker chip, the woman would walk in and put that chip down, and when she did it, I got what the kids would call the ick. I didn't like it, it made me feel good, it made me feel wrong, it made me feel bad, it made me feel different from the other kids. But most importantly, it made me feel poor, because what that red poker chip symbolized was that that we got free reduced lunch. I was the only kid in my class at the time with a single parent. I was the only kid in my class receiving that red poker chip. I was the only kid in my class who was struggling and on social services at the time. And so I share that with you to say that things that we do in schools today can make or break and change the trajectory of a young person's life, sometimes in really good ways, and sometimes in really struggling ways. And I'm sure those adults were well-intentioned when they said, how do we create a system where we know who gets a free lunch, but didn't realize the impact that that simple red chip would leave on somebody's life for quite a long time. I will tell you it wasn't all awful. I will tell you that was the best darn cheese I've ever had in my life. And if you've ever had the government-issued cheese, you will not fight with me or disagree with me because you know that it was. I speak to 35,000 people a year. Nobody has ever argued that fact. They, in fact, agree that that was the truth. I will also say that it wasn't always a failure. I joke sometimes in a lighthearted way, but I understand it as anything but a lighthearted joke. See, the one thing that I excelled on tremendously was I got 100 on what we call the ACEs study. And if you don't know the ACEs study, it was the largest longitudinal study of its kind done by Kaiser Permanente back in 1995. And they took a look at behaviors in a household, and then they took a look at longevity of life. And when they began to put all the pieces together, the higher score of ACEs, the earlier death. The more ACEs you have, the earlier you die. You die of heart disease, you die of stroke, you die of cancers, you die of addiction, but the more times you say yes, the greater risk is that you are going to die early. What does that have to do with anything that we're talking about? Well, if we're really going to understand kids, we're going to understand what's happening, we have to understand all the pieces to that puzzle that go together. I also love sharing that with people because it does help understand that even though I got a 10 out of 10 and I said yes to every one of those things, it means that recovery is possible. And people can lead fulfilling lives. And the big difference between somebody who dies early and somebody who struggles based on their ACEs has to do with having one caring adult outside of their house in their lives. And that's where you may be here to learn about your kids, you may be here to learn about how to be a better, how this affects you in your job. But ultimately, no matter what job it is that you have, you all belong to a community. And you all have somebody in your community who needs for you to be a lifeline for them, especially now. And so none of this was a road closure, right? And so how did I get to being somebody who had a 10 out of 10 at ACEs and I get to travel this whole country as a speaker and trainer? It was because when I was 15 years old, I said, yes, Your Honor, no, Your Honor, I'm sorry, Your Honor, and I'm never going to do that again, Your Honor. And His Honor sentenced me to hundreds of hours of community service time. Not the kind of community service I could put on a college application, but it was the kind of community service that if I don't do it, I'm going to duty. And as big, bad, tough as I thought I was growing up in the streets of the Hamptons, I will tell you, juvenile hall scared the daylights out of me. And I know somehow if I go in, I can't get out. Or I wouldn't go out. So here's where you come in. I got to do the community service in my high school office and the principal's office. I was spending a lot of time there anyway. I might as well get credit while I was there. And so I was in the high school office and a community member came in. She had kids in the school, but she didn't work for the school. She had 100 posters for this program and she asked me to hang those posters up. I didn't give her a hard time. I didn't look anything like this. I had jeans that had all sorts of holes in them, not because I was trying to be fashionable, but because we were on welfare. And those jeans belonged to 5 people before they made it to my body. I had a Metallica t-shirt on for no other reason than I have no rhythm, but I could bang my head out to heavy metal all day long. I had a chain that went to my wallet with no money in it, but I felt the need to have the wallet there anyway because I wanted my energy to be like, stay away from me before you even got a chance to get close to me. And so Mrs. Block saw right through all that. She hands me this stack of posters, tells me to go on my way and hang them up. I start hanging them up. I start reading the posters. I'm intrigued with what the posters are saying. Talked about going away for the weekend. Talked about meeting new kids. And there's this voice inside me that says, you should go on this program. You should go on this program. So I got back in front of Mrs. Block and she's like, Kim, you should go on the program. And once an adult thought it was a good idea, I thought it had to be the worst idea ever. I was like, Mrs. Block, that's not for me. That's for the good kids. That's for the shiny kids. That's not me. She looked me dead in the eye and she said, Kim, you're gonna make a difference. I had to look over my shoulder to see who she was talking about because nobody had told me I'd make a difference. They told me, get out of here, you're no good, you're a bad influence on my kid, don't hang out with my kid, and you're not gonna make it to your 18th birthday, and you're never gonna amount to anything. That's what I had heard. Nobody had ever said, you're gonna make a difference. So I started to tell her my unworthy story. I'm like, Mrs. Black, I can't go. And she said, why not? I said, I can't afford it. She said, I'll pay. I said, Mrs. Black, I don't have a way to get to Shelter Island. She said, I'll drive you. Shelter Island's an island off of Long Island. I said, Mrs. Black, I don't have, my mother's never gonna let me go. She said, I'll call her. And every time I told her no, she said yes. She saw beyond the stuff that I was putting out. She saw beyond all my bad ways that I was acting out, and she saw something in me that no other adult had brought to the table prior to that. So I got out there to the campsite, and it was all the shiny kids, it was all the good kids, and I was like, oh my God, get me out of here, I don't belong. And I'm home all at the same time. It was such a crazy feeling to resist something so much, but it was the exact place that I needed to be. And by the end of the weekend, I didn't ever want to leave. And on that weekend, I had found things that I had never found before. That weekend, I experienced something called unconditional community. I found home, but most importantly, I found hope. And all that was possible because a community member looked after the neighborhood kid and did something about what she saw. And so many of your neighborhood kids need you to step in. But we've stepped into this place of parenting of, don't you parent my kid, don't you tell my kid what to do, I'll tell my kid what to do. But check this out, TikTok is telling your kid what to do. So as much as you think you're the only voice and the only influence, I'm going to tell you, there's so much influence out there. And community parenting is the way to go. Community parenting is the best thing we can do if we really want to make a difference when we're thinking about the youth of our community. And by the way, I love the program so much, I'm now the executive director of it today. The same program I went to when I was 16 years old, I get to run it today and be its leader. We have a variety of different programs we run, and we serve Suffolk County, New York, which is, go all the way down to the city and bang a left and go to the end, and that's pretty much us. So I love prevention, and I love recovery, and I love having conversations about human connection and our need for human connection. And that's the part about social media and the draw to social media that we oftentimes disregard. See, we've been trying to communicate and talk to one another way back to 1844 when we started using these things, these codes, these symbols, and that was our first Morse code. That was our first kind of experience of social media. And from there we began to change and adapt and grow and find different ways to connect. And some of you in this room might remember when Friendster first hit the group. And in Friendster you found out who your friends were, where 6 degrees to 7 degrees of separation were, how we all connected, and that was the first kind of group that started in 2002. And then LinkedIn came in for the business folks. And then business folks could be sharing big thinking ideas on LinkedIn. Now it's just like Facebook for professionals. It's not necessarily the big thinking, it's just justifying being able to use Facebook during the day. MySpace hit the scene, right? And then we had music, and we had different ways that we could connect and see the walls of our people. So I was telling the group earlier, I remember digitally cleaning and taking care of my sister-in-law's farm. I don't even know what that did, but I went on and I did it every way to get some kind of badge to say that I did it. And then, of course, we had Facebook hit the scene. But Facebook at first was just for college students, not for moms. Right? As a matter of fact, moms were not even allowed anywhere near Facebook, and the college kids kept it really under wraps of what it was. But then all of a sudden the adults started getting on it. And see, the thing when we talk about social media, we tend to think that this is just a problem for youth. And the truth is it's not. We all struggle across the board. I can tell you story after story after story of adults who have gotten themselves in trouble on social media, just trying to connect. I can tell you stories about adult people whose bank accounts have been wiped out because somebody groomed them and built a relationship on social media and they thought it was a real person. The way that people operate on there, they're so skilled at what they do. And they'll find the most vulnerable. And that could be a youth, but that also could be an adult who's just looking to have an outside connection. And I know it's so easy to say, well, how does that happen? It's so easy for it to happen. Somebody starts listening to you with a kind ear. Somebody starts validating you. Somebody starts telling you great things about yourself and showing interest in what it is and what you're doing. And that becomes all of a sudden like, oh, somebody cares. Because we're all looking to find belonging and we're all looking to find connection. That image right there, which happens to be from Burning Man, has always been so powerful to me because it shows our basic need to have friends, to find our person, to have somebody who's there for us, whether it's daytime or nighttime, it all is the same. And so we communicated, right? We sent these paper notes to one another, like when we were in class, and we flicked them just right, and hopefully the teacher would intercept it by the time you shot it across the classroom. We then advanced and technology hit its way, and remember when AOL hit the scene? And that was amazing. You could like message your friend in like their house and they would get it. It would take forever for the dial-up network to hit. How many of you just realized it was just last month we got away with dial-up network? We just shot, like some people were still using dial-up network. And then the phone came onto the scene. And then like 27 versions of the phone came onto the scene. And suddenly we had mini computers in our hands that had apps that made our lives efficient, that we could do really good things with, but we also could get sucked into doom scrolling on. And our brains could start to get rewired as a result of it. And that doom scrolling and that way that we like get sucked in suddenly becomes energy drainers and time suckers out of us in ways that we almost feel, even as adults, we might be missing something if we didn't go out on social media, or it wasn't real unless there was a picture that took place and you posted it on social media. And so many people have different ways that they do social media. Some troll it, some are influencers, some are early adopters, right? Some just share all about their family. Some are promoters. Some of you found out about tonight's event because it was on social media. I can tell you, and I shared with them, the algorithms work, because last night I was sitting in my hotel in Binghamton looking at what's going on, just looking at my own Instagram, and suddenly it was like me that I was speaking, right? Now, Instagram knows to give it to me because why? I'm in the area. All of my algorithms say I do drug and alcohol prevention, positive mental health, I'm a speaker, I work with youth. So the algorithms pick all that up and say, oh, she would love this workshop. They just didn't know it was me giving the workshop, right? So algorithms and the way that our computers work absolutely make sense. And there's a lot of good that come out of the digital world. We can communicate faster, we have access to information faster, we can send something faster, right? I talked to a young person today, they're appalled it costs 70-something cents to put a stamp on it. I just watched my daughter-in-law send out their brief a couple, earlier this year, my newest daughter-in-law was like, I have to send out these wedding invitations. You know how much it's going to cost me to send out these wedding invitations? And I'm like, yeah, that's the way that it is, right? So them learning like the old school snail way of doing it certainly has been, financial barriers are put in place when it's just so easy to send something. So there's great things about technology. We can communicate faster, more effectively. We have access to more information. Those are all great points about it. It can let people know what we're up to. The PTA can send information out in an instant and everybody has it. There's brilliant things about the digital world and what we live in. Physically, it's having a toll on us. We tend to sit like this most of the time, typing. We don't even realize that our bodies are changing. Our thumbs are changing from texting all the time. Our neck is getting stiffer in different ways. Our eyes are starting to hurt more because of all the screen time. And so we definitely have seen the fallout of it from development, from processing disorders, from ADHD. These are all things that we've seen as a result. And one of the things that we have missed because of this digital world is just those moments of human connection. Those moments when we can just sit and get through our uncomfortability of talking to somebody new. Those moments that we benefited from waiting online. When you went to the store and you waited online and maybe you sparked up a conversation with the person behind you. Find a young person who's willing to go into a store and not order everything, where they could just sneak in and pick it up and run right out of the store. It doesn't happen. And what they see as efficient, some of us are arguing back saying, but that's what builds community. That's where you run into Mrs. Smith on the line and you talk to Mrs. Smith about what's going on with her. That's where you strike up a conversation with a random stranger and you find out all this amazing connectivity and stuff that's happening. Or you find out there's no connection and you really didn't like that person anyway, but move on to the next. See, the art of conversating, the art of connecting, we've been looking to do it since even before Morse code. And as we begin to shrink down the opportunities to make eye contact, to look somebody in the eye, to walk through all those connective things, we reduce the ability to connect as community. And so we find ourselves in these places where we think we're all so busy, right? I'm so busy. I'm so, like, if I'll get some award at the end of the night tonight if I said that I was the busiest person in the room. The award never comes. Yes, we are all busy, but we're also so darn distracted too. And we're distracted, and some of our busyness and some of our discretionary time gets sucked into candy porn, or Candy Crush, right? It gets sucked into social media. And it's so easy to do it. Once you take a look at social media, like, you can just wind up scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. TikTok actually has a dude that comes on and says, hey, you've been scrolling for a while, might want to take a break, and you want to yell at him. Like, you're not my mother, right? But he's just trying to give you like some help and hook you up, because it's so easy and time will go by. And so we spend our time never where our feet are at, constantly like ding, 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 somewhere else. So we'll have our Zoom conversations, but our phone will be right there. We'll be working on answering emails or doing some other report while there's a Zoom happening. And so we're very seldom singularly focused now. And the challenge with that is it almost creates the anxiety that you're all hearing about, the anxious generation. If you haven't read that book, that's a great book to read. But part of what the anxiety that continues to get built is because we have all these things going on at once, and we never get a chance to detox from them in a correct way. And so COVID happens, we lock into this virtual world. By the way, Zoom did not get created because of COVID. Zoom was a tool we could all use long before COVID. We just liked driving all over the place to go to meetings and never saw it as an efficient piece. But so we got stuck in just looking at these boxes. And our mental health began to become affected by it. See, normally you don't think about yourself as much as you do. You don't see yourself as much as you do now on screens. And that's why for some of you who didn't grow up in the digital age of photos, you grew up in the film age of photos, you have no idea what your good side is, what your bad side is, what the pose looks like. You have no idea because you had to wait 3 weeks for those photos to come back from your photo finishing, right? It wasn't that you instantly saw what you looked like, but you also weren't constantly analyzing how you look. I have more wrinkles today. Gosh, I look like I'm getting old. Wow, look at how puffy my face is. Oh, look, I'm fat. You didn't have all that stuff constantly going the way our young people do. They are constantly seeing reflections of themselves. And sometimes they can put it in its right place, but oftentimes it's not. And so this visualization of mirror, 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 mirror sets ourselves not only up to physically, to mentally have challenges, but it begins to affect our spirit along the way. And so there's this online version persona of ourselves, and then there's our physical self. And as somebody who's raised a neurodivergent son, my youngest son has, I guess they would call it level 1 autism now. Back in the day, it was Asperger's. And so I let him go onto social media because he struggled to physically make friends in his school. And so at the time, the kids were on Facebook, so I even let him get a Facebook account. And I wasn't sure that that was the right thing to do, but I let him do it anyway because I figured at least he could connect. And for a short while, he was doing really well with it. But I remember that one fateful night that I looked at it, and all of a sudden my heart sank because Jordan went out and posted something on social media, and somebody wrote, hey Jordan, you might as well go kill yourself. Nobody likes you anyway. and it was my baby, right? And the Hugs director cannot beat somebody up on the local playground. That doesn't play well for television or for the good of my organization. But man, did that hurt. And here was me who was trying to create all these inclusive circles everywhere I went, and my own kid was being excluded. So those decisions of when to let a kid go onto social media, how to monitor it, to make sure that it's really good for them, and the benefits outweigh the negative impact it may have, that's the way you need to begin to look at this. Not every kid is the same. Not every kid is going to have a negative experience out there. But as we begin to take a look at utilizing it, how do we help them navigate it? Because it is here to stay. It is not going away. And it is something in their daily world. But the dopamine rush that happens is no different than the dopamine rush of using substances. And so when those young developing brains are starting to wire and they start to feel good, that's the dopamine that's like kicking up inside of them. Normally, we only talk about ourselves 30 to 40% of the time. Online, we talk about ourselves 80% of the time. That's a huge shift. And so it's like me, let me tell you what I'm doing. And that's a big shift for how we would normally work during the day and then meet up at the coffee house, at the water cooler and talk about what was happening in our day. And so that wiring, that dopamine, that let me talk about you, people are liking what I'm saying, that's then fire, feel good, until it doesn't. And the challenge is the loop that it sets. That constant loop in the wiring of the brain will continue to chase that. The same as it chases good feelings. But when the good feelings aren't there, when the dopamine's not pumping, that tends to get our kids in trouble. And so different things like ADHD, body dysmorphia, those things now suddenly spiraling go the other way. And we saw during the pandemic some of the big tragedy. We saw that under 20 or under, I'm losing my numbers in a second, screen time doubled, depression tripled. Thank you very much. Screen time doubled, depression tripled. It was the way that we connected was going online. And that had a benefit during that crisis. But the feeling of loneliness continued to build. The under 25-year-olds only make eye contact 30% of the time. And when we think about that, think about how many times you stand in an elevator, we're all doing this. You go to a restaurant, the whole family is sitting at the table, doing this or watching a screen. And it's really up to us to begin to start that change, to get people away from the screens and create those opportunities that are screen-free. Because the Surgeon General did warn us about this years ago. And although he's not our Surgeon General now, he talked about the pandemic of loneliness happening long before COVID even happened. And so it's important that we seek truth. It's important that we find out as much information as we can. It's important that we don't read headlines, especially in the world of AI. It is so difficult right now to tell what's real and what's not real. And we'll fight over it on social media. We'll fight over it with our friends. And so I shared with the group earlier today that even I walked into work one day and I'm like, do you believe? And I pointed to, they're like, Kim, that's AI. And I was like, no. And they were like, yeah. And so it's really even for my 56-year-old kind of knowledgeable self who has this, I got suckered into it. So then I think about other people in my life who aren't as tech savvy. And they're going to start to believe all the things that they're hearing, and it's going to be difficult to figure out what the truth is. So those boys of mine, apparently they had to go get married and move to the great state of Massachusetts, and they left, and they're living these great lives there, but left me with an empty nest, and I'm trying not to still be bitter about it, but I am a little bitter about it, and I miss them terribly. I have these 3 dogs that gladly take their place, Tuxedo, Truffles, and Tallulah. And so at the time of this story, my 26-year-old was living at home with us, which is a whole other conversation of why he was still 26 living at home in a workshop that I was not here to talk about today. But so he was hanging out with us, and my husband and I go to watch my son Jordan play football up at Bryant University. Zach gets to stay home with the dogs. Zach plays football himself. Zach decides he's going to go, he has a game, he doesn't decide, he has a game about an hour away from our house. Zach feeds the dogs, they have a dog door, they can go in and out, they can be left alone for hours. Zach goes and he drives up and he plays the game, and he hits halftime and he looks down and his phone was blowing up. Like all sorts of messages. He looks at it and it's a guy named George, who he knows from up the block. He calls George, he goes, dude, why are you blowing my phone up? He goes, oh, thank God you called. John was just here. John has one of your dogs. Zach goes, that's impossible. I left the dogs all there, they're fine. He's like, you better call him. So Zach calls this guy named John. He goes, John, he goes, you got one of my dogs? And John goes, oh my God, thanks for calling. Yeah. Zach goes, which dog do you have? And John goes, the white one. Zach goes, oh, that's Tallulah. She's the house, we call her the house manatee because she just lies around and does nothing all day. He's like, John, do me a favor, hold the dog for about an hour and a half, I'll be home. John goes, I can't, I gotta catch a flight. Zach's like, I need for you to do this. And John's like, I can't. And Zach goes, got it. He figures out the solution. John, do me a favor. What address did you find the dog at? John gives him my address. Zach says, perfect. Just go into the house. The house is unlocked. It's always great that I tell people out loud that my house is always unlocked. But you're upstate, so I kind of figured this is the same place I can say that, right? So because the house is unlocked, just put Tallulah in there. The other dogs are going to be like, hey, thanks, the dog's here. Jewelry's on the left. And then I just need for you to go in and like put the dog door in the slot so the dogs can't get out because obviously the gate is open. John's like, I'm not going into your unlocked house with your other dogs there. Are they big? Zach goes, well, they are, but they're just friendly. John goes, I can't do it. And Zach's like, dude, I need for you to do this. It's the only solution we have. So John reluctantly goes into my house. The dogs are like, hey, another dog's here, fantastic. Jewelry's on the left, just like Zach said it would happen. John walks through the house, slides the stopper in so the dogs can't get in and out, takes a picture and creeps out before my other dogs can even react to him being there. It's now third quarter. Zach looks at his phone, saws that same number he's been talking to. John sends him a JPEG. That was great. Zach had his picture. John did his job, took care of and secured the dog. Zach looks at his picture, knows that it was a white dog, knows that John was in our house, knows that all is taken care of. Zach has done his job, except for when Zach looked at the picture, Zach realized immediately, not our dog. Not our dog. Now he had all the information right. White dog, yes. Dog found outside my house, yes. But had he actually dug a little bit further for the truth, he would have realized, not my dog. That dog has a diaper. That dog, my dogs are looking at that dog like that's a chew toy. That's not even a dog. So it's important that we ask questions. And when we take a look at addiction, digital addiction, addiction to substances, it all starts in the brain. That's where it starts. And that's why this digital wiring of the brain is so key important, especially now. Especially when we talk about all the different substances that are out there. Because we're not just talking about drugs and alcohol. Now we're talking about online gaming. Now we're talking about gambling. Now we're talking about that digital addiction where we can't put down the Xbox. We can't put down PlayStation. I almost said Nintendo 64. We can't put down PlayStation, right? And we're playing 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And especially our young males are especially getting caught up in this because this is the way they connect, right? And so now they're 28, 29, 30 years old, and they have to work, and so they're juggling so much of the gaming in this one way that they communicate, whether it's sports related that they're playing or not, but it's the one way. Now it's kind of taking over and interfering into their lives. It's affecting their jobs, it's affecting their partners, it's affecting their kids if they have kids. But so much of that starts in those primary high school years. The brain right now, from adolescence up, is going to grow in a really fast way. And it's going to grow from the back, which is like a gas pedal. That's like, dude, it's going to be epic, it's going to be great. To the brake, which is like, ooh, something bad can go down. Don't do it. And so this goes go, 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 and this says stop, 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 but they're not wiring together until an average age of 25. And when we begin to put things in that change that young developing brain earlier than that neuropruning and that wiring happens in the brain, we make changes in brain chemistry that take a really hard time to be undone. And that's why it's tough for people to put phones down, because the brain is wired for it. It's almost calling for it, the same as it would a substance. And so let's talk about substances really quick. Substance misuse is going down, and that's a good thing. As much as your kids will tell you everybody's doing it, not everybody's doing it. I can tell you that this group right here can give you data on how many people are not doing it, because there are more not using substances than there are. And soon you guys are going through a survey where your kid, well, you'll have accurate local data for you to tell you exactly what the numbers are. Kids will say everybody's using it. I'm telling you, they're not. And as a matter of fact, the trends are going in the way that we want the trends to go when it comes to the amount that is using. Those are great trends to see that those things are going down. I know vaping is kicking our butt by storm, and we almost don't have enough resource to address what's happening with vaping. But I want to draw your attention to what also is happening in the data. Our young girls are using more alcohol than our young boys. Our young girls are using more cannabis than our young boys. Our young girls are now vaping more than our young boys. And our young girls are now using opiates more than our boys. 4 major substances. As a matter of fact, all the substances, the girls are out using the boys. Now there are 10,000 ways our young girls should be competitive. This is not one of them. And so we have to kick back and say why. What's going on with our young women? How can we begin to even unpack that? What does this say about our current prevention strategies? What does this say about our current climate in the schools? What does this say about our current climates within families? And the one thing we know, although we can't blame all of it on, we know that social media plays a major role in it. Young girls are feeling their self-esteem getting crushed on social media. Young boys are as well. Young girls are finding themselves being impacted by influencers. And sometimes the influencers they'll begin to follow are ones that are going to teach them all the best cooking, all the best beauty ideas, and then others are just telling sad story after sad story after sad story as they're navigating their mental health. And depending on your algorithm of your social media determines what pools you're going to keep getting put into. I had a grandbaby this year. All of my algorithms are all about baby stuff and how to be a good parent. I did that part, now I got to figure out how to be a good grandparent, right? But all of my algorithms during when my sons were getting married were all wedding feeds that was coming through on my TikTok, that was coming through on Instagram. So whatever it is you're looking at, the algorithm speaks directly and continues to feed itself what it is you're looking at. And so if young girls are struggling, that tends to be, they'll find more, and if young boys are struggling, they will find more of that type information feeding into them and going back to them. Kind of like the law of attraction in a very kind of weird digital way, but it's what gets put out there is what's going to come back. And so we know that we can teach young people how to use social media for good. It just takes active work. And it takes time spending teaching them on how to plan it and how to move forward. And we think young kids, we still talk about Facebook and young kids, they're not on Facebook. Young kids are on TikTok, they're on YouTube. The conversation earlier today, we know a lot of kids are connecting on Discord, especially in the gaming community. They are on Discord. We know that adults spend 44 years staring at a screen. Did not make you happy. Good gosh, look, 44 years you spend staring at a screen. 4 to 6 hours a day are on our smartphones alone. The other 2 hours, 14 minutes a day, we spend on social media. So when we turn around and say we don't have time to, or I don't have time and I'm so busy, look at that energy sucker right there. Just of social media alone. U.S. teens, they'll spend over 9 hours a day on screens, 3 hours and 16 minutes watching videos. That's what they do. Ask them how to tie a tie, they'll be like, I'll just YouTube it and figure out how to do it. They need to learn how to change a tire chances are we didn't teach them how to do it. They just go to YouTube to figure out how to do it. YouTube becomes the answer for any challenge they have. So the resource is a good resource and it's there for them. 1 hour and 46 minutes a day playing games, so that's almost 2 hours, 1.5 hours a day on social media. And just recently, the newer reports are showing 3.5 hours on social media. Some of that does get tied to different times over the last 5 years. We tend to think of COVID as something that happened like 10 years ago. COVID was within the last 5 years, so its data point does come into play regularly. And so 1 in 5 youth have had a significant depressive episode over the last year. Almost 13% of them considered suicide, and almost 6% of them had a plan. When we begin to really break that down in numbers, 1 in 5 kids having a depressive episode in your school at any given time is a number that cannot be ignored. When we begin to look at the suicide rates of our young girls, they are the highest they are in the last 4 years. In New York State, in the middle of a pandemic, our policymakers at the state level decided that they were going to say online gambling is okay, and so is the sale of cannabis in your local community. Last year alone, $22.6 billion were placed in bets. $22.6 billion came out of our economy, and what would have gone to people's savings, gone to people's purchasing something for them, purchasing something for their house, investing in their future. 22.6 from their local mom and pop stores got taken away and put right into the online gaming platform. Algorithms become the rule. They become the roadmap for everything that gets fed into you. And although you can change algorithms, it's not so easy to do. It's going to take all the past people you talk to. It's going to take the people they've talked to. If a bunch of you get together and your phones are all around one another, suddenly you'll see stuff, ads show up, and you're like, why is this showing up on my phone? Well, it's because your phone was in proximity to other phones, and so it follows us. There's a great series on Netflix all about, I can't pull it right now, but it's all about how from everything we purchase online, every digital footprint we leave, how it all gets fed into our algorithm. And that's why when you go on different websites that have free advertising, you'll see that necklace, the ad for the necklace that you were looking at a couple of days ago on another platform, because it shows up there, because it follows you across all multiple platforms. And so when we begin to take a look at how this all connects, high use of social media, struggle with mental health, easier for young people to get involved in substance misuse, specifically tobacco, alcohol, cannabis. And how do they get it? Why does that begin to happen? Well, it becomes norm for them. They see it in ads, they hear it in songs, it'll show up on their feeds, the things that can show up on their feeds will. And people will say, well, Kim, how do they get it? Well, it's just as easy as a couple of clicks. It doesn't take much, and by the way, if I could have started, if I knew I wouldn't get arrested for it, I would have shown you in real time, because by the time I started this presentation to right now, I could have had 5 deliveries made to this door. Because it's just as simple as me going out and putting a few code words out onto Instagram or onto Snapchat to suggest what it is that I'm looking for, and then I get matched up with somebody, and somebody sends it right into my inbox who it is that's selling. So pretty much all I have to do is go out on social media and say, hey, interested in X, whatever X might be, and then somebody hits me with it, and then we start DMing one another, and then from there we turn around and we negotiate how it happens. Social media is the Amazon and the one-stop shopping for any substance it is that a young person wants to get their hands on. And so the DA did a fantastic job of coming up with a campaign called One Pill Can Kill. We did that based on the fact that we knew at one point 7 out of 10 pills had fentanyl in them. They were made in somebody's house, which pretty much right now in your organic chemist game, you're well beyond the heroin opiate epidemic, we now have a chemist game happening. And we have things that are bought right off of Amazon. They're not even bought off of the black market. Some are bought off of the gray market. Some are just bought right online. And there's pill machines, presses being done in people's basement. And let me tell you, they don't stop to think, ooh, did I mix chemicals inappropriately? Did I cross-contaminate? These are not things that are on the minds of people who are popping out tons of pills into their basement. They're just going to look to make as many of them as they can, look as legitimate as they can so they can get them out onto the street. And this is all done through legal means, or legal websites, I should say. So I go out onto Snapchat and I'm like, hey, I want Addy, right? I want Adderall. I'm studying, it's late, I'm a college kid, I want to get my hands on Adderall. I just put that on, and then suddenly somebody makes a hit with me and lets me know that they can take care of it. Or I go out onto Instagram and I put certain codes out onto Instagram, like a plug that says, hey, I need a connection for a blue pill, a blue dot that signifies pills, or if there's a card there that says, hey, I'll deliver it to you. So if I'm interested, I just put a couple of codes out there and somebody will pick it up and somebody will share it with somebody and let me know that we can get it. So then we talk either on Instagram, we talk either on Snapchat, we figure out a time and a place to meet. It all happens fairly seamlessly. If I want to get really involved, I start to send complicated messages about what it specifically is that I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for heroin or mushrooms or cough syrup or marijuana, there are all sorts of different symbols. And as much as I would love to tell you this is gospel, it's not, because it'll constantly be evolving and changing. As soon as we put in print, this is what they're looking for, the kids will come out with the next new way to communicate and say what it is. So we are often always in this cat and mouse kind of game. But no matter what, this tells you that there's a whole alphabet associated with this that kids are tapping into. So we make the deal, the checkout happens, I Zelle, I send money by Venmo, and suddenly it shows up wherever it is we agreed upon. This is not complicated. This is really simple, and it happens in the most rural and the most urban of cities across this country. And as much as we get like really freaked out by substance misuse and the dealers, I have to tell you, parents are often the biggest suppliers of the #1 substance that kills more kids than anything, and that is alcohol. And if we can make one change in this whole entire world, I would suggest we stop making it easy for young people to access alcohol. So what we can do, limit time online. Know their passwords, know that you can build trust with them and know their passwords at the same time. Don't give them a cooler phone than you have. Give them your hand-me-downs, right? Make sure that you find a way to not necessarily, you don't always have to be in their stuff, but let them know that it's your job to parent. It's your job to question these things. It's your job to learn about these things. And ultimately, you're the one who has the power to make the decision on what platforms that they are allowed on. And yes, sometimes it'll break your heart because they're like, please, 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 everybody's on it. First of all, once a young person tells you everybody's on it, it's not true. Because not everybody is on it, right? And the older generation in the room is thinking, well, everybody just because everybody jumps off the bridge. Because that's what everybody said in my family, right? Just because so-and-so jumps off the bridge. But it is tough to navigate. And the one definitely thing that has changed since how we were parented, how we parented, and what's happening now in the generation is we definitely don't like hurting kids' feelings. We definitely don't like for them to feel shame. And as a result, it makes it more challenging to say no to them. When it comes to your digital social media, show them how to have a healthy relationship with their phone. Don't be constantly on your phone and telling them to detach from their phone, because they're going to mirror your behavior. So if your behavior is you're always on a phone, they're always going to be on the phone. So make sure that when you're stressed out and you're like, I just need to breathe for a second, say, come on, let's all go for a walk. Let's all go take a walk outside. Let's do something healthy. Let's touch grass, which I know is a TikTok thing. But go out, Feel Mother Earth underneath you. Do whatever it is you need to shake off the digital attachment that begins to happen. Don't let them sleep with their phones. Keep the phone. They'll tell you, I need it for my alarm clock. Get them a regular alarm clock. And for you, keep the phone as far away from yourself as you possibly can when you're sleeping as well. And as I wrap up and we open up into a panel discussion, I know your school has put resources on the website that shows you what you have parental controls over and what you can go in and change when it comes to Instagram, when it comes to the social medias, things that you can have in your control. Please go to your school's website, take a look at those controls, and then set them accordingly for what works. But let's please go back to community parenting. See, this is where I grew up. I was born in Brooklyn before I moved out to the Hamptons, and that was my grandma, that was my gal. And she would stand there with a house coat on, a wooden spoon in this hand, probably a Chesterfield in this hand, and whether her teeth were in her mouth, it was a 50-50. But she was going to yell at each and every one of you long before you ever got home. We have to go back to looking after the community kids. We cannot allow TikTok and all the social medias to have more influence and more control over them than we do. It is definitely a collective challenge. It is not an easy one, but it's one that I know that we are all set that we can do. I will share with you before we go into the panel. I know it's not lost to me. I'm going to tell you, come find me on social media after we just talked about social media. My organization is on there. They have a lot of great, they've got a great vaping presentation happening right now over the next week. But they also put up great educational stuff. Find them. You can find me personally as well. I'm on social media as well. My staff answers the HUD social media line. And then lastly, I did tell you that the ORN sends me here for free. They don't ask anything for that, but they do ask if you could take out your phones and do the evaluation and let them know your response. I do like when you do that. I also like when you tell them I don't suck. So if you could avoid that and just have a private talk with me directly on it, that would be fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being so attentive. We are going to open it up to a panel and give you guys some chances to ask some questions that may be burning for you. Thanks so much for playing along.
All right, my name is Kristen Russell. I work with Kylie at the Tioga County Public Health. I'm going to ask our panelists to grab a chair over here, and we're going to sit along here, make it a little bit more comfortable. Kim, I'm sure you hear this a lot. I hate to come after you because you're doing your job. So thank you. I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to kind of settle in their seats. We did get a few questions that were asked ahead of time, and I'm in your way of the QR code, I'm sorry. We did get a few questions ahead of time. We will go through those, and then we'll kind of open it up. If anyone wants to ask their questions, they are more than welcome to. If you cannot hear me, let me know. I'm not that much of a trajectory speaker, but I'm going to do my best. Do we want the mic? Does anyone else want the microphone, or do we think we're okay? Everyone good?
Yeah, I think.
All right. So we'll start with our first question that we got ahead of time, which I'm going to throw it to. Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves first. That might be a good idea. So we'll go down the line.
I'm Andy Davenport. I'm the middle school counselor, and this is Captain. You have kids here?
I'm Karina Evanfeld. I'm the social worker here for our middle school and high school.
Matt Felder, Director of Technology.
Thank you.
So the first question that we got was talking a little bit on the safety issues, especially around Snapchat, which Kim, you did touch base on. But we did also get another specific question or request on Roblox. So if anyone knows anything about that, we'll start with that, and then I'll go to the next part of that. But does anyone have any?
Yeah. I only know of it from seeing students using it. Not here, it's left on our website, but or on our network. But I did, after we got the question, I added that to the family page, information for families about how parents can set up parental control or Roblox. And if anybody has questions about any particular app, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to either conversation with me on the phone or via email to talk about any concerns.
And then the other part of that question was about how kids can be pretty smart and navigate around the VPN, which again, I'm going to Matt, because I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so VPN is a virtual private network. I think maybe the question was more about students using a VPN to kind of get around filters. So often at home you may try and put a filter on your home network, and a student might be crafty, or a child might be crafty, and if they can purchase a virtual private network, they can log into that, and it's sort of a tunnel around the filter. And so if you suspect your child or a student is doing that, I would reach out to an expert. You can feel free to reach out to me, and we can talk about how you might be able to detect that, and then what you can do to further block that. Most home internets, whether it's through a Verizon or a Frontier or Spectrum, they give you some controls within your own internet, your home internet, so that you can block virtual private networks from being used, and also add filtering. So if you wanted to block adult content on your own home network, you could do that as well. So there are lots of resources depending on the provider. You may just check with them to see what resources they have.
And while we're on the topic, I think it would be a great opportunity, if you don't mind talking about some of the protections that you have at your school specifically, and what other schools might do for the people who may be streaming. But I think that would be a really good opportunity to know like what kids are being protected against while they're here.
Sure. I mean, at our, all schools throughout the country, it's a federal law to have content filtering on the networks and on any devices that the students have. So that's just sort of the baseline. Adult content and is pornography. Those are always filtered at any school. And we here in Candor sort of take a gradual approach to opening up content. So content that might be sensitive, whether it's questions about doing questions about drug use or drugs themselves. It's filtered at the younger grades, but the health classes in the junior and senior high school, they actually do want to teach students about those different drugs and the potential pitfalls of that drug use. So we do filter that still, and then when students are getting access, the teachers will request it to be unblocked, and then we know the teacher is asking students to do research and we unblock those sites. We also have with the filters on our student issued devices, the Chromebooks, we have parent control so that when a student brings their device home, you can not only see what they're doing on the devices when they're home, but more importantly, from my perspective, is you can set a time limit. So even if the student has the device in their room, the device shuts off at whatever time you want. I would say 9 o'clock, but I know students don't go to bed at 9 o'clock anymore. But if you wanted them to not be online after 10 and before 6 a.m., then you can set that time limit, and even if they had the device, they could do it. So along with what you were saying about having your child's phone in a location that is a public location or even a place that you can control, I think that is a huge thing for students at night. They will try to always say, oh, but I've got homework, and they have late practices and they don't come home until late, so you don't want to be up until 11 o'clock to monitor when they shut it off. You automatically can do that and then have some control.
I was just going to add, I think some of the question was also about like some safety concerns that come up with apps such as Snapchat, Roblox, Minecraft. I would just say like be paying attention to who your child is communicating with on those apps or even playing games with. I think a lot of some of like our exposure that our kids get to really cool that I get to meet all these people, through games or through this like online community, and they start to prioritize that and hold that more important than the community that they build here at school in real life. So yeah, just be asking a lot of questions, like pop in while they're playing these games, try to see like who are they talking to on these headsets, who are they chatting with on these games. Keep track of kind of who their contacts are in Snap. I think a good limitation or a good rule to set is like they can't add anyone on Snap that they don't actually know in real life. I know a lot of the kids try to add kids from other schools and they think that's kind of cool, but if they're not actually knowing these people in real life, face to face, and that's a good like limit to I think start with.
And I'll just chime in, I have a 6-year-old, and so I was telling Kim earlier that we were having a conversation, and she goes, yeah, at Dad's house I get to play Roblox. And I was like, oh, okay. So I think just as parents, it's important for us to know, because I work in this field and I know all this information that, these can be somewhat dangerous because they have the ability to chat anonymously with different people, but maybe, the other parent, and at least in my situation, didn't know that. So it's just the more they can learn, the better off you are. So we'll move on to the next question, and anyone feel free to jump in, but I'm going to ask Kim to kind of talk a little bit since she touched a little bit based on this, but how can we reinforce positivity and protect our kids from the dangerous side of social media?
This is like so much of the conversation about everything, right? We have to kind of go macro, we have to look larger at it, we have to look beyond, hurting somebody's feelings, but really play the long game in parenting for safety. And that's really where the conversation happens. Now, from a culture point of view, you can begin to talk with your kids about how they can be a positive influence on social media. And one of the activities we do, I was sharing earlier, in my trainers will go in for my program into local schools, and they'll pretend like they make like Facebook walls or Instagram walls, and they'll put up a picture. And every other one, they give all the kids markers, and they're like, okay, we want you to write what would be normal, what normal kids would write in response to that picture. Our staff will have gone and put one positive thing, every other one they put a positive message as the starting message, and then on the other one they put a negative message. So every other picture starts with positive, every other picture starts with negative. The ones that started with a positive message stayed positive, and all the messages were like, you look so beautiful, that's amazing, this is great. But if one was like, oh, you kind of look, bad, whatever, like bad hair day, whatever terms that would be from kids, then the messages followed suit. It almost became like that mob behavior, like we just followed what we saw and kept going with it. So you can teach your kids to be the positive influence. There's a great video of a guy, just look up guy dances at a festival, right? There's a great video about human connection and how we can positively influence. The guy is dancing like all over, and somebody starts filming the guy, almost like, they're gonna film it and put it on social media and be like, check this dude out, right? And then everybody be like, oh my God, he's ridiculous, look at how he's dancing. That's how the video starts. They get 2/3 of the way through this guy dancing, and one girl says, I'm gonna go dance with him, because he's having fun, I'm gonna have fun. And she starts dancing. And then somebody else runs up, and suddenly it becomes this mob. The whole entire concert, this festival got up, and they were all dancing with this guy, having the best time with him. So we can influence and teach our young people, especially, to do that positive influence, not just in real community here, but how they can do that online. And that does start with, teaching them character. It does start with teaching them how can they be a good friend, how can they be a compassionate friend. And if they see somebody really getting beat up out there, how could they even go in and send even a private message to them that said, hey, hope your day is better tomorrow, and find a way to support. Again, this is not, I see this, I can pull up my social media right now and show you adults right now who are fighting over the last week about stuff that has happened in community. This is not just kids, but we have the ability as individuals to go out and cast that stone that creates the ripple effect that begins to move the wave of positivity. And that does come back to fundamentally how do I want to spend my time? I want to spend my time by making the space better wherever I go. So if I'm on social media, I'm going to look to make the space better. If I'm in communication with you, I'm going to look to make the space better. And as we begin to teach our kids that they have that same power, that you can, this is where you really can stand out and find who your character is and define your character and show that by beginning to switch things to the positive, especially if you see it go awry. There's enough messages out there. And the last thing, and then I'll exhibit, is in all of our programs, all of our youth programs, but also in my agency with my adults and with our staff, we have something called the 2-for rule, and we're actually moving it to the 3-for rule because of the science behind it. For every one negative thing you hear about yourself, it takes 3 positive things to undo that one negative thing. Think about that. So if not only are you walking out there and during the day when I'm at school, somebody says something to me, and especially if I can't decipher sarcasm, right? Now I'm like just holding on to all these negative messages. And I'm definitely not getting those, I'm not getting a 3-to-1 ratio in positive messaging, right? But then I turn around and I start talking about negative self-talk on myself. So now, I got it during school, now I've become my worst enemy in what I'm saying to myself, and then I go online and I'm getting negative feedback there. We can see how suddenly lights begin to dim in young people. And that's what we have to change. So our rule has been a 2-for rule. For any negative thing that gets said, you have to say 2 positive things back to that person, even if you were just joking. And even if I or anybody on my team says something negative about ourselves, we have to come back with 2 positive things. So it's 3 positive things. The science says it's 2.94 something positivity to get rid of one negative thing. And I think that that's, when we all begin to, like little shifts, I think that is part of the solution. And realizing we can't change or control other people's behavior.
One of the things that stood out to me about your PowerPoint, especially again when we were talking about different strategies, was the grounding techniques. And so I'm actually going to throw it to our counselors. I'm going to put you on the spot with a question. But what are some type of grounding techniques that, you know, some of the parents that are here or watching online can kind of adopt in their own homes to kind of help their students or youth to be able to kind of navigate social media, go through the positive, go through the negative? Do you guys have any grounding techniques or suggestions?
Well, talk about body techniques a lot with kids here at school, so much so they're just like, don't tell me that around me. But the thing with the phone, and this is what I talk about, and I think when talking with kids, they do like learning information. They don't love being told what to do. So I think in thinking about having some of these conversations with their kids at home, if you can frame it as a way of like, oh, I went to this presentation, I learned this really crazy thing about building. Did you know this? They do like learning information. I think it might surprise you. Like they might not show you they love it at the moment, but then they might come back with like, I learned this thing or I remember this thing. So what I talk with kids a lot about here is like the phone is just a very quick way to sort of pull them out of reality for the moment or whatever is stressing them or bothering them. And it's like essentially a quick way to not sort of be in the present moment. And the more they do that, the more being in the present moment becomes uncomfortable and unbearable for them. Which is why I think we see a lot of kids struggling with what they feel is like just general anxiety, general like stress, like low tolerance for anything that is stressful or anything that feels out of their control. The phone feels very much in their control. So a lot of like running, we talk about essentially like putting away the screen first of all, but just like very simple things like, you know, I talk to kids a lot about just being able to sit and put their feet flat on the floor and sit with their back flat against a chair because so many times we're not sitting that way. We're very like sort of guarded and uncomfortable, we're in stress what I just said sounds very simple. It's really tricky for them to do, and I think part of it is like they have a lot of ways to, like Kim was talking about, to kind of like hijack that dopamine cycle, to where they're used to sort of getting something, an external thing to sort of give, to focus on and give them pleasure. So the grounding techniques, while they sound kind of simple and they're super important, they're tricky for them.
I think a lot of it also comes to us too, that we have to model things for them. When our kids are little, how do we teach them skills? We first model it for them, and then there's a step-by-step process until we can let them do it. The first time they tie their shoes, we don't just let them try, we make them watch. And they probably were watching for years before they tried to tie their shoes. And so we have to do that stuff too, and I know that you reiterated a lot about, hey, something that's really important to kids is things being fair. And so it's not fair if mom and dad are on the phone and I can't be. And I've talked to kids at the school about it too, where it's like the adults don't have to have our phones on. But I try to respect that because I know that they can. Some of them don't care, some of them do. But just showing them that I'm trying to model it for them as well, I think is an important thing. So like us changing our habits around our phones is going to play a huge part in them doing it too, because how do you get by? If we're sitting there doing something and saying don't, they're not going to buy it for it. And I think another thing that isn't like a quick fix as far as like a skill to try and get them to calm down, but being able to use play. These kids love games and gamification of things. And I'm sure that you do this in your office a lot, just like I do, of using games to be able to connect with kids. Get a board game out. Go play cards with your kids. Something as simple as that. I have so many good memories of doing that with my parents and didn't realize these were moments that we were connecting. I thought we were just having fun and playing, but there's conversation about life happening. And the game allows them to relax. They like playing a game, and the next thing you know, they're talking. And so, if you want the phone to go away, pull a board game out. Pull out a puzzle. Something as simple as that. And then over time, they'll start to appreciate that, and that 10-minute game of Uno or whatever it may be turns into talking time. And they don't need the game to talk. And you can talk to your kid. And that's, obviously, some of those things take a little bit longer than like a minute to do, but putting that into your weekly routine, I think will be very helpful.
And I was just gonna, I have little kids at home. I work with big kids here, but I have little kids at home, and sort of ways I trick them into some grounding techniques is like we play a quiet game in the car. I tell them to try to guess how long it's gonna take for a minute to go by, and they like that. And for the competition, they have to kind of guess like and tell me when they think 1 minute has passed. I'm like tricking them into like meditating almost. But those are just like other ones that just come to my head.
I love the board game suggestion. We're a big board game family. My 6-year-old loves Sorry. Very big suggestion on that one. She loves bumping you back to home. So I'm sure that is a very fun game for them.
And those games teach these kids, like where they're growing up in this instant gratification kind of a lifestyle, where even a game as simple as Sorry, getting bumped back at home. I don't know how many kids have flipped the board game over and from elementary to middle school age kids, because they just can't handle it, that they didn't win right away. And so getting them to learn a game as simple as Sorry, or something as simple as Uno, that is a game of luck with a little bit of skill built in, and then seeing them progress, be able to lose and still have fun is a really, really cool thing to see.
Uno no rules too. That's another martial if you really want to divide your family. There you go.
Building activity furniture.
Yeah, plus 10 and you can stack. So no. And you want to stay away from destroying your family. Avoid that one. Okay, so another question we kind of had. What are your thoughts or recommendations, especially when it comes to teenagers, on using their social media? And what are some of your thoughts or recommendations when it seems like a teenager is using social media to build their networks? We kind of just touched a little bit on this. Instead of developing other relationships, so how can we kind of help our youth navigate moving away from that to the community relationship?
I think oftentimes we don't ask youth enough what matters to them. Like what are their pillars in their life? What do they stand for? And sometimes if you can, some of our leadership programs, we do that. What are your core elements that are really important to you? And then, are your actions pointing to that success of those, whatever your target is, right? So that becomes an important conversation to have where they can get ownership. And much to your point about, if they know there's science that backs it, they're actually intrigued by things that they can actually say, oh yeah, that's absolutely right, and they can see the benefit from it. But also having them take ownership for who they are, and so challenging them to think about, what's the long game you're playing. We don't often talk to them enough about the long game because their brains can't, they're instant, they're in the moment. But at least beginning to plan for it, and what do they stand for? I think those are important conversations to just really pull that out of them. So it's not you pushing down onto them, they have ownership in their actions, but that means they can learn accountability and they can take ownership for all of it.
I was just gonna say, yeah, finding ways to encourage them to get out and try new things. And it goes back to the point of doing a little modeling for them too. Like maybe you can try something, maybe you can go with them. I think sometimes we get caught up in this idea that we will be safer at home or keep them home, that's where we want them to be, we know where they are. But that's where they are kind of having no choice but to turn to social media and the digital community. So yeah, just kind of asking what they're interested in and seeing if together you can search for something that maybe is going on locally, or reach out a little bit and get them a little, give them some other experiences or around people.
And if you're following an influencer, follow that influencer too, to see what that influencer is talking about, and because some of it is really good stuff, and some of it can be concerning. And you have to also make sure is that influencer aligning with what our family values are and what we think is important in our family. And and some of our kids are going to become influencers and make a ton of money out there doing it as entrepreneurs. They're just going to do that because that's the world that's ahead of them. But it's less that will do that, when a lot of people are trying and do that. But when you have 6-year-olds talking about skincare and a skincare regimen, influencers are working because, they didn't learn that we didn't teach them that at 6 years old you need to be at Ulta and, buying X, Y, and Z.
I really like this next question, especially, for me, if we wrap up a little bit late and I'm gonna get home past 8 o'clock, close to bedtime. So, for me, today I only have 10-15 minutes to really connect with my kid. But how do you think that a parent, if they only had that time, because again, we have teenagers who are in school sports, who are in clubs, who are doing this, who are coming home from work late, what should they prioritize as a parent when they're trying to connect with their kid during those 10-15 minutes that they have?
I think in the simplest sense is letting them know that they have your full attention, that you are there completely. There's no distractions. In an ideal world, that turns into a conversation, and if that's the case, we want to do more listening than we want to do talking. We don't want to be peppered with questions, just one simple question, and then allow some silence to let them think and answer. And if you practice that a couple times, you'll be pretty amazed. Most of them will usually open up. I put kids through a lot of uncomfortable silences in my office where I ask a question and I'm like, I know you don't want to answer this, but I'm going to sit here and wait. Sometimes it's excruciating, but most of them don't like it. And so then they start talking. And when they do, it starts to feel bad. So just let them know that you're there 100%. Listen more than talk. And keep the questions to just one question at a time. They should go on.
And facilitate questions, right? As if you ask a kid, how was your day? You're going to get good, bad, or right? Those are going to be your options. But to think about different ways you can ask questions, incorporating emotional health and emotional intelligence into those questions. How did they see somebody show up as a leader today? That's always a fun one. Did you see anybody step up in school today and do the next right thing even when it was uncomfortable? Because then that also gets them thinking, oh yeah, stepping up and doing the next right thing is important. So there's a resource somewhere, I will look to find it when I get back, back home, but just all on those, asking questions that provoke conversations and giving that opportunity rather than you really pushing, because it's like pushing a rope, you're not gonna get the outcomes you want.
And you'll probably find yourself asking those same questions just because it's what we're used to. Like if you ask how was your day, you get good, you're like, shoot, that was the wrong question. Well, then you can ask, well, what does good mean?
Right.
What was good about it? So that even if you get caught in the old habit, like you can still find workarounds to that good or that, what's that mean? Why does it happen? And then give me a second. Let them be uncomfortable. Eventually they'll talk.
I also like the, what is it, the pitfalls and I don't know, the like and the loves, or the loves and the hates, that's a good conversation starter. Yeah, what's one thing we loved and what's one thing maybe we didn't have that sort of great day, then it opens up that conversation. But anyway, that's just emotions, so we're gonna need to
Well, we always did that as a family. We would be having dinner, and it was required before we got up. It was, what was the best part of your day, and what would you do differently? And everybody had to go around, so they weren't on the spot about it. So there's that, and then the other was for us Sunday night. We knew everybody was going to be home, and before we did anything after dinner, we sat down and looked at our phones for our screen time. And it was we tried to make it a little competition to see who could reduce it from the week before. It's a good way for you to see what apps they're on, and then you can have some idea of what conversations to have about which apps they're credit.
I would just say, like praise in general, like just finding ways to point out something good about them, something you love about them, something you've noticed about them recently. I think especially like in those tween to teen years, they're becoming extremely self-critical of themselves, and they're trying to find their self-confidence. And I think they're also at a time where like they're hearing a lot of directions and whatever from the adults around them, and kind of just like praise. I think goes a much longer way than you think it might at that age, especially because they kind of are acting too cool for school at the same time, and they don't really want to hear any of it. But just like positive messages, and then also I think like trying to find interest or trying to find more information on the things that you know they're interested in goes a long way as well.
I have a hard job telling everyone it is 7:30. So we're gonna wrap up our panel. I wanna thank you all for coming. I wanna thank Kim for giving us a fantastic presentation. If you guys don't mind on your way out, if you did not already get a parent resource bag, we have a ton of resources that we were able to collect from different agencies in our community. We also had a small half sheet of paper that is our personal feedback, but also we wanted to get a gauge of if this is helpful and if you guys feel a little bit more confident in your social media and being able to talk to your children about it. So if you don't mind, and it also looks like maybe Jessica wants to announce that there's a raffle, so I'll give her time to do that too.
Parents who came do have a raffle, so you can grab it, tote bag, and lay out. It's actually to give away. Just numbers. 143494. And we've got 143491.
I think that's the first one that you called out.
You got one?
I don't know.
Was the number on it?
I didn't have a ticket, so I wasn't paying attention.
What-
And then
what's
someone
on
just
the-
gave me a ticket, and
what's
then
on the-
I was trying to figure out what was happening.
What's on the ticket? What number?
It says 143494.
Okay, you want a tote bag.
Oh,
Okay.
great.
Does anyone have an
Are you
N99?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was told to give that to you when Jessica started doing her tickets.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so here's another that ends in 90.